Yeah, I mean, we've skipped one or two.
We have. It's not on purpose. Everybody can rest assured. We're not we're not every week streamers, but we do try to find a nice topic every week.
Coming to you
Also,
live.
coming to you live. Also, we've had kind of a big project going on, haven't we, Ken? And
Got a couple. Yeah,
it's been taking some time, which is why we're at 11:30 Eastern and
things have
not
been busy.
11. Things have been busy, and I think that soon enough we're going to go back to the 11 o'clock time zone because that's the storm. That's our normal time when we're used to doing our ZDTVs.
All right, well, make up your mind because I'm getting real tired of dragging and dropping that calendar event.
Are you? It must be difficult.
No, it takes more than that to get to me.
I am certain of that.
Yeah, I've seen
So,
you put up with some things.
well, always for the. Well, in fact, I think we might get into some of it today, aren't we? Are we
It
going to
takes
show the
patience.
world? Are we going to show the world some of our
I am
conversations?
happy to show my work,
I love it.
share
All right,
share my
we are
struggle.
gonna we are gonna do that. So let me throw up the old boop. This is what we're gonna do today. Oh, let's do this view. This view? Yeah. All right. So on ZDTV this week, we're gonna make some new container images. Ken has been working so diligently, working on some interesting stuff, working in the Kubernetes space, doing some interesting things in Kubernetes, and some of that was to enable, in order to enable Kubernetes, we need some container images. And so those container images, the ones that we have always been the quick start. And, it served its purpose. It was a good thing. It was always meant as a development aid. I created the quick start images for better or worse. So if there's any shade to be thrown, throw that shade right at me. I violated lots of Docker principles and just made it work so that usually it would, if I needed a quick environment to throw up and to try something interesting myself, the quick start was always there for me. And I didn't really give it a whole lot of, love for productionizing it. And then we had a couple people on the forum who are now using the quick start and trying to use it in a production way. And they've hit some bumps along the way, and they've been very understanding about the bumps that they've hit. It is an open source project, and we can only do so much at so fast of a rate, but we do try our best. And so now we're getting around to the fact there's just, there's a need to produce cleaner images. And I know, Ken, we've had some conversations in the past about this, like maybe months, like it comes up every now and again. But now it is to the point where, we think it needs to happen, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I I've been daydreaming about getting things operationalized for environments like Kubernetes for a while, but it never really percolated to the top of the stack. And a handful of community members started working on it around the same time. So that was a rightful kick in the pants, if you will, and got me
Indeed.
moving.
Yeah, it was great. So I know, Ken, you've already made some Docker files, and who knows, people may have even found those Docker files.
I
And
know for a
so
fact
this
I have.
Yeah, and so this morning, Ken was diagnosing some troubles. We have our private Mattermost instance, which is our chat app that we use, and Ken was asking some questions to the team and saying, "Hey, I'm having this problem," and he said something that triggered Paul Lorenz, who's been on ZDTV in the past. He said, "Hey, is this a recent development build?" And Ken said, "Yeah, I built from release next, which is the branch in Git where the ZD CLI is built from when we're doing the development just before the release. It's the step before it goes back and creates a release." And so I said, "Ken, why are you doing that? You're maybe setting yourself up for some bumps, some extra bumps that you shouldn't have to hit. Why don't you make a tag and use it? Why don't you make images from a tag?" And I've personally wanted to update the quick start with Ken's new Docker images. And I said, can we maybe release a tag version that uses the released artifacts instead of the built version? Hello, Kitty Cat. What's Kitty Cat's name?
Handsome Bill.
Handsome Bill. Love it. So he's got that look to him too. He's like, look at me. I know I'm on camera.
Chuffed.
Um, so I said, hey, why don't we do a ZDTV working session? Hence the little Ziggy with his little work box and his hammer. And so
Oh,
Ken
look
and
at
I are
that.
gonna Ken and I are gonna do a working session where mostly we watch Ken and his. If you've never seen Ken behind a terminal, you're in for a treat because when it comes to terminal users, Ken is one of the most advanced I've ever seen, and I always enjoy watching it. So we're gonna
VI
whip up.
bindings as performance art.
Yeah, I'm telling you, not everybody gets into it. Like you, I am merely a consumer of the shell. I am not a wizard like you are. You and we have a couple people here at Net Foundry, often the OpenZT project, who are kind of wizards in the shell, and I'm always in awe a little bit. All right. Well, that's a good intro, I think, Ken. Do you want to just hop? Oh, also, I forgot to add another bullet point. You were also trying to diagnose a problem. And I thought some live
Yeah, let's follow
debugging.
up with that if we still have time.
Yeah. Do you want to do the live debugging first or last?
Last.
Okay. I just thought maybe it was right there on the top of your stack. Maybe you wanted to get into it, but well, okay, let's do that last then. So you
Yeah,
want to share
so
your screen?
yeah, I will. And to summarize, we want to we're getting ready to release a new batch of container images, and we want today to get to play with them early because we already have a release of Ziti that we can use, 027.2, and so we just need that binary inside the new container images.
That's all we need.
Yep, and we need to give them a version tag like 027.2, even though the release machinery hasn't tripped yet, hasn't triggered yet for 027.3, the new one. We can go
And
ahead and fake the container images and start playing with them.
we're not going to fake it. We're going to push them. And speaking of the difference between
Yeah.
faking them and pushing them, Ken, what was it that you said to me on Mattermost about this process? Do you recall?
Was I talking about immutable releases or something else religious like that?
I wouldn't put it quite in that term, but I can pull up the quote here. Let me find this quote. Let's see, because I said, "Hey, Ken, can we maybe use the released versions instead of the release next versions, and can we do it on
Uh-huh.
stream?" And let's see, what exactly did Ken say to me? I want to find it because it's important. I loved the term. Um, Here it is. Quote: "If I saw someone doing that,
Oh.
I'd suspect them of sloppy release discipline." And I said, "Well, we could discuss this on the stream too, Ken."
So
So
it's so easy to shoot myself in the foot when have all these spinning plates, in different versions. I can't remember all these details. So when I try to explain why I get so pedantic and nitty gritty about things like release discipline and releases are immutable, and don't use a new serial number for every new thing, and little things like that. It's just to try to protect me from myself,
well,
and
I believe
I
in those
can't.
philosophies for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I certainly can't hold the whole world to it, but I'm just trying to make sense of my complicated world with things like that.
Yeah, and it's an interesting question because if we were to look at the current process that publishes the quick start, you will see that that process goes and fetches the latest released artifacts.
Okay,
It does not build the artifacts.
right.
It goes and fetches them and then publishes the image from the fetched image. I don't know if your Docker
Let's take a look at it right now. Will you
yeah,
go ahead
let's.
and pull it on?
You wanna
Pull it
share?
on the
I'll share
screen.
your screen for you. Boom, there you
Yeah, go
go.
ahead and do that, and
Let's,
just
maybe
make it
this,
big if you can, so that
maybe
people can
this. Let's see, I will turn my
see
camera
what's
off
going
then.
on.
Not remove from stream, I wanna turn my camera off. Boop, there we go. And then if you turn your camera off, it should make it bigger, right? Then we can pop back
Just
in when we need
maximize
to.
it.
Okay.
All right, so hopefully that's legible.
Oh, very much so, yes.
Yeah. So what we've got here is a GitHub Actions workflow file, and I'm going to hop all the way down to the very bottom right here where it says call publish Docker images.
Well, you know
And
what?
just
I wanna even start before that because
okay.
I also have a different perspective on life maybe, which is I personally, I came to this file myself, and I think I told you this yesterday, and I said,
Uh-huh.
"Yeah, my developer experience looking at this was not particularly great." And the reason is because I can't stand CI markup or CI, what's the word? DSL. So, like, GitHub Actions, Jenkins, all of these expressive languages to do something on a CI type of server. I hate them all because it's basically impossible for me to test this action. So personally, when I make an action, it's almost always run this shell script, and that's like all it ever is. Now there's some stuff at the beginning that you can't get away from, the steps like get checkout and the install go and that sort of stuff. But when
Yeah.
I came here and I saw it was like 100 and something pages or lines long and doing all kinds of stuff, I was like, whoo, whoo, that's long. Makes it hard to debug it, in my
I'm
opinion.
offloading the cat here. I think he's done with me. And
It's
no,
still legible at this size. If
but he
you
left me
you
a
know
present, a
fur,
carpet.
yes,
Yeah. So most importantly, I totally relate to what you're saying. Files like this can get miles long and several layers deep. I've encountered this with every DSL for CI that I've worked with,
yep,
and even configuration systems like
yeah,
Ansible and
of
Terraform.
course, yep,
It's really a problem of DSLs in general. They're both a blessing and a curse
indeed.
because and really what I've learned the takeaway. Well, to explain the problem very concisely, you have layers upon layers. For example, if you've got inline shell here inside this little run
Hmm.
block, that's got shell environment variables that are being interpolated on the runner. That's a virtual
Exactly,
machine that's spawned by the CI controller here. So it's not only is it a totally different lexical namespace in terms of variable scope, it's a totally different machine. Those values are being interpolated in a workflow and then shunted off to a runner somewhere. That kind of surprising behavior, it's something you really have to know about in order to master writing something like this. And that's true of
for sure.
Jenkins declarative pipelines as well. You've got Groovy script running shell scripts or the reverse, and you've got multiple layers. And you've got Java stack in the mix there too. So it can get really complicated. My emotion about this is more grim acceptance than hatred. It's just like the fact is that we're using it, so I'm trying to use it in the most principled way that I can. So I know it can be ugly, and I'm all for improving it, making it a better experience. But I'll jump
Cool.
into I'll just explain what's going on with this workflow. This workflow builds the binaries. So this
Okay.
fires whenever somebody pushes a commit to GitHub, then the Ziti repo builds the binaries.
Now that's
So
so interesting because based on our intro here, you were very regiment about, the artifact and its purity. So by building it, you are actually building it twice. Once in the normal release process and once again for Docker, which I would
you're
argue,
jumping to conclusions now, Clint.
oh, am I?
Yes.
How? You're
So,
building.
well, just watch. So
Okay.
this publish job builds the binaries, okay? It's named publish, but it also builds the Linux binaries. It brings together the Windows and Mac OS binaries and builds the Linux binaries all into one directory, and then it uploads them to GitHub. So we run the same workflow, whether it's a release branch or not.
Oh, so this
It,
is actually going to publish the release artifacts as well as Docker.
well, this is just how the GitHub release artifacts get published. When this workflow runs on a release branch, then they get uploaded as release artifacts.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay.
So
So now
this is the process that builds those artifacts,
this
is
is
what
the
you're saying.
process that this is the normal process that
Gotcha.
builds the release binaries whenever
Makes
this workflow is run on a release branch, which is the main
makes
branch,
sense. Makes
the
sense.
trunk branch named quote main. Okay.
Gotcha.
So the very last step here is call publish Docker images, and we see that that runs only if we're on main. I jumped there. I meant to highlight this.
Yep.
So if we're on main, then we call this reusable GitHub workflow,
Okay.
which is in the same repo. We got the path right here. So I'm going to hop over to that file now, which is a sibling of the one we were looking at. So this runs on release branches, only for main. Okay, so
One thing I did notice, by the way, I saw that it's called CI build. Can we name it
uh,
something better?
actually, I think that's just a unintentional
Yeah,
carryover.
I think so too.
The name of the workflow is like publish Docker images.
Perfect.
All right,
Thank you.
so that's what this
We've already
file
made an improvement.
contains.
That's
We have,
exciting.
right on the spot. So when we call that from main, we are going to send the Ziti version that was computed by the Ziti CI, which is our custom CI code base. So anyway, that's the computed version that we're currently releasing. We're in the process of releasing it, so we're going to pass that as a variable. And now I'll just summarize the rest of this mess here. We're gonna take that version and we're going to build a container image named ZDCLI first, right here, and we're going to stuff the release artifact into that container image. And we're going to do that for x86-64, the most common CPU architecture. And we're also going to do that for ARM64. So we get two container images, and they're smushed into the same name, OpenZD slash ZDCLI.
Is it
And you're
just
going to have
two? I thought you said ARM. I thought you said AMD 86 too. No,
AMD 64 and ARM 64.
gotcha. Not AMD 60. Not AMD 86 though.
Um, so x86-64 is AMD 64.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what about x86 then? Whatever the right term is that I'm
That
not
would be
using.
that's your old 32-bit Intel architecture.
Yeah, we don't care
Right.
about that.
We're not building that at all.
Okay.
In we're not building that. We're not building container images for that. At least I'll leave it at that unless you want to go deeper.
Nope. No, that's all I was asking. I was just trying to
Okay.
ask
Yep.
that.
So we're gonna we run this workflow once for each CPU architecture because that's the way the other build works. So it just runs for each CPU architecture and kicks off the container image build for each. And when it gets to this point, it stuffs the binary release artifact into the container image. So now I'm going to pop over to the Docker file, which is being called right here to build that CLI container image. Now I'm on a branch here where I have got a temporary placeholder, an alternative value for the, and now I've confused you because I'm looking at the wrong Docker file. This is the correct Docker file. Okay. So this is the one that's going to be used to build the ZD-CLI container image. And right now we're in a branch that hasn't merged to the release next branch yet.
Why is it installing Python?
That's a good question, Clint. And should we install Python? We don't need Python with the, so I've been iterating and I added some stuff here to make my life easier downstream where I'm using the image.
Mm-hmm.
And at present, we could delete this and it wouldn't matter at all. But
Right.
this is how you would install an a yum package, which in this particular image is installed with package manager micro DNF. That's used by the universal base image minimal variant from Red Hat. So this is how you would just do, this is like apt install package name in Debian distros, only micro DNF install.
Right. So the point is Python is not necessary.
Correct.
Why is Python installed? It's just because it's easier for Ken once it's built.
I was experimenting, but let's remove that because it's only a
Well,
distraction.
no, it's relevant. It's actually relevant
Okay.
because one of the this was going to be one of the things I wanted to do is test with this because one of the things that comes up routinely are people on discourse have challenges, and if the quick start came with JQ installed, it came with wget, it came with netutils or whatever the right package name is, right? It came with some helper stuff that
Yep.
I would be able to use because I would rely on the fact that I knew that they were going to be in the container and I could
Right.
rely on them. So it is relevant to me in that way because that might be important. I just don't
Mhm.
know. But the purist says make your Docker container as small as possible, right?
Exactly. There's several different factors to it that have different weights that we have to balance between there. I would say that the highest level of refinement would be a container that is minimal. It only has what it needs to run the application. And you
Yep.
can always add utility containers that can be deployed at will or run as sidecars that offer you will have a lot of usefulness for troubleshooting, debugging, especially during development. But it's
Yeah.
best to solve that stuff another way than to bundle it all in. But you cannot deny the convenience of just trashing the app container with utilities, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what I intend to do.
That's what you did, right?
Until
That's why Python's
that's
there.
exactly what I'm going to do until I get it working, and then I'm going to refine it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't so I looked at these containers or the Docker files before and noticed that that wasn't there, and that was the thought I had, but I figured, at some point, maybe we would end up making a new base image that had debug containers in it and make or debug apps in it, and then make other images from that one, which could be like the debug version, and then, you just start your Docker container up, your Docker version up. You
Oh,
change the
I just learned something reading Docker docs. In Docker jargon, a base image is actually from scratch,
hmm.
so it is truly all the way at the root base, just raw from scratch. So I'm going to stop saying base image unless I mean that.
What's
But
the word you're gonna use instead?
I don't know.
Parent?
Yeah, this is. I mean, this is
Source?
a single stage. This is a two-stage build from UBI minimal right here. We're bringing
Why
in
does
the
it have 2
Bitnami
froms?
because we're bringing in a single file from this container image.
Oh, that's a single file?
Well, this is making the entire image available, but we're only bringing in a single file right here.
Oh, interesting. I see. I
So
don't see.
it's a trusted supply chain from Bitnami who implements Docker Content Trust, which we can verify with crypto, a way to get the kube control CLI installed.
And this is one of your helper scripts that wouldn't be there in the final image.
Right now, this is the only one that I need. Yes.
Yeah, because you're working on Kubernetes world.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to run kube control from inside the pod during an initialization step, and so I need that CLI.
Okay.
So it's just there for convenience. It's a little bit sloppy, and I'll probably move it out into the just the container that needs it later. But for now, it's in our parent image.
Okay.
All right, so let's go ahead and get that release image built. Right?
Yeah. How are we going to do it? So, because like I said before, I would go and fetch the versions I wanted, but this looks like it's going to build them, which that
I'm going to
would
fetch it.
trigger. You're going to fetch it. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Love it. How are we going to do it?
Well, let's set our version to 0.27.2. And if you will allow me a gnarly one-liner,
Love them.
then I'm
Okay.
going to need to go into a temporary directory, I think, before I download this, just so that because I've already got a Ziti subdirectory of the Ziti repo where I was, so I can't use that name.
Yep.
And if I say something silly, don't be surprised because I'm a little sleep deprived today. All right. So we've got an empty temporary directory, and I want to get the ZD binary for that version downloaded, and I'll make sure it's actually installed on my system, and I'll go ahead and copy it into the repo. So I've got.
So I heard a
Let's
lot
see.
of typing there. Was it just Ziti version? Is that all? I didn't see it come across the screen.
I got to delete my development build so I can use the one that's installed. All right, so I've got Ziti version available right here. And I'm going to go ahead and show you the Docker file again. So we can see that there's a step in this Docker file that it's going to do copy from artifacts directory, target architecture, OS, Ziti into this location in the container. So
Mm-hmm.
we need to make that binary available so that when we build it, it gets stuffed.
Mm-hmm.
So
Now,
I'll go
right now,
ahead.
when you untard all that stuff, we have a bunch of extra stuff, right? We were
Well,
still,
I
we were
filtered
still.
out everything else.
Oh, you did, and through the one
Yeah,
liner. Is that what?
yeah. My one-liner filtered it out. So when I did tar right here, I stripped off everything except
Oh,
Ziti.
oh, I see. I see.
So we just have the Ziti binary in this temporary directory right here.
Nice.
And so I need to just move that file into my Ziti repo in the release location right there.
And can you just list that directory and make sure nothing else is in there?
So you want to just see what else is there?
Yeah. And
Yeah,
so
there's
it's not going to copy this other stuff.
no, in our Docker file, we're only going to copy
Straight up.
this
Yep. No
one
star.
file,
Yep.
and then we're
Cool.
going to copy entry point sh from the Docker builder.
Perfect. I am simply peer reviewing you as we go. That's all.
Totally. Yeah, audit away. And yeah, this other stuff in here can go away just for tidiness.
Yep.
We're not going to use that at all. All right, so now we need to compose a build command. So I'm actually going to search it from my history, and then I'll explain it before I run it because it is
Cool.
kind of long. If
I'm,
you'll allow me
I
to.
I am not surprised.
I think this is the one. So let's bring this in and break it down a little bit. We are going to run BuildX, which is Docker Build Kit. It's a newer build system. We're going to specify build arg, which is the reason the main reason we're using BuildX in this case. Well, there are two reasons. One is it makes it really easy to build a container image for multiple platforms, multiple CPU architectures at the same time. And it also allows us to decouple the what's called the Docker build context from the file system that we might want to mount or copy into the container. With the old Docker build system, they're the same thing. So you can't copy anything into the container that's not in the build context. It's just one directory, but this lets us have a parent directory, like the entire workspace, where we can get whatever we want. Anyway, that's the reason. So we are going to build the official OpenZT CLI
Nice.
version. We are going to use this Docker file from the CLI directory. And our build context is going to be the current directory, and then we're going to load the resulting OCI image into the local Docker library.
Oh, I've never used load before. Never seen it.
Let's see if it works. BuildKit is also much more efficient in terms of caching the Docker build context. So if you happen to have gigabytes of files laying around in your Git index or something, if you don't have that ignored, then anyway, importing to Docker. So now we have this build hash should be available. We can do an inspect of that one and verify the hash is correct. Okay, does this part make sense?
So far.
So we're gonna just check to see that we have that exact hash in our Docker library locally. Looks good. All right, so that gives us a base image. We can go ahead and push that too.
Love it. See, that was so easy.
Docker push OpenZT, ZT CLI. That looks good. Now we can go and see that in Hub. Let's look for
I'm pulling it
CLI.
right now.
There we go, 027.2. And we only built the AMD 64 image this time. But when we get the automated release, it'll have both.
Where do
ARM64.
you put the ZD binaries in here? Oh, it's on the path already. That's nice.
Yes.
I've pulled it and executed it into it and ran ZD. It's
Awesome.
very well. That was exciting and very pleasurable for me, Ken.
Well, good.
Now I have a ZD CLI image to look at, but we're not done, are we? Are we going to deploy the other ones, or are we done for that? Like, is this going to be, good, or what do you think?
We can go ahead and build controller and router too.
I think we should.
Let's do it. It'll only take a second.
There's a saying around my house when something that needs to get done, which is almost always a Clint job, that we're going to do it, me and my wife, we are going to get this done. So I am enjoying us getting this done today. Ken, thank you. And in this case, if it's not obvious, you're the one doing all the work.
Here's my very short Docker file for the controller. And we are actually going to source the image we just built with a build arc. So we're going to layer this one right on top of it, ZT controller, and it has the simplest of entry points, simply exec ZT controller with whatever args came through. All right.
With whatever args. So I would be able to mount a config file wherever I wanted to mount it. I would be able to put PKI wherever I wanted to put PKI.
That's right. The container image itself is not opinionated about these things.
Fantastic. I can only imagine how excited some of the people out on Discourse are going to be about this, because it definitely will make it easier.
All right. Here's our build.
And if not, I'm excited because I think it'll make it easier.
Now this one's actually a little bit simpler. Just quick editing here.
Load and push. Look at that.
That's a mistake.
Oh.
You can't do both, actually.
Pull request, see? Yeah. Or peer review, I mean.
Yep. I guess for some reason it remembered a command that never actually succeeded. But in this case, we're gonna pass through the ZD version as a build arg because we're gonna be sourcing from that version, and then we're gonna build the same version with our tag.
Cool.
All right.
Cool.
So that's going to happen all inside that one directory, the controller directory right there. Oh, I mean right there. Bad aim. Okay. So now we have this SHA in our Docker library, which we should be able to verify for the controller image. So that'll be controller. And the SHA we're looking for is shorter for some reason. Oh, maybe I didn't actually copy the SHA-256 part. That's what it was. Okay. There we go. That looks good. So now let's push that up. This time we're pushing the controller. All right. So now we should be able to see that in Hub.
Out of curiosity, why did it say mounted from Ken Bingham?
Why did it say what?
Go back to the Docker push there. I didn't catch this before. See how it says mounted from Ken Bingham controller?
Mm-hmm.
Why does that show?
These are storage layer hashes. from Docker, and I had previously built a container image with this tag. And so that's how it is named currently in the cache, in the build cache, that storage layer. The only thing that matters though is that there are no differences by cryptographic function, hash function. There are no differences in the contents between it's known by this hash. So
So
the
that's the
storage layer is
actual
identical,
hash, right? Like that's the identity, and
right?
it's called mounted from K Bingham Foundry's Z controller on your machine.
That's the tag that I was building at the time that storage layer was created in the cache. So it still has that label. But
Hmm.
when I built this one with a different tag, I reused the same storage layer from the cache, and it had zero differences from the other image that I was building. So
Hmm.
it's just a local artifact. It's just visual noise
Good.
that it happens to be labeled that. So we can see
If
in
you had
Hub.
asked me, I would not have been able to explain it.
That's okay. The tag was updated a few seconds ago by me, and we have only AMD64. All right, just one more. The router is very similar, very minor differences there. Just audit that really quick.
So
Make
sad
sure
that LL is not an alias inside of that container.
you're sad.
I know.
I think that's yeah, I mean, it would be easy to add, right? That's a little quality of life improvement we can
Yeah.
certainly make.
I always type LL. It's
Me
just a
too.
habit.
Me too. It's so convenient. I always want long list.
Yeah.
So almost always. So just like the controller, we're just going to exec Ziti router with whatever args are passed through. That's our
So
image.
exciting.
So we'll just build X controller. We'll just change this to router and this. We're ready. Now we can see that our hash is new and we
You did
know how
not
to
copy. Yeah, there
do
you
it
go.
this time. What's that?
I said you didn't copy SHA-256, FYI, but you already
Yep.
noticed.
Yep. I can learn. And I got that. So I'll go ahead and push the router, and then we'll be able to see it in Hub.
Very exciting. Love it.
That looks good.
Yep.
All right.
And now anybody on a Mac is going to be a little sad because we didn't do ARM64.
Oh, so there's no kind of like cross emulation or anything
You have to
with the new
enable
Mac
whatever the
OS?
Rosetta or whatever they call it.
Oh, okay.
But that's why BuildX is so nice because it lets you publish both those architectures.
Right. So now we can see inside of the controller image that we built, we have that ZD version and the router. Looks good. And they also have they all three have internal CLI that we installed.
Yeah.
So I think we're good here
Well,
on
that was
that.
fun. See, that's great. Now we have images, legit images that we're not skeptical at all about because Ken explained to me that he pulled down the released artifacts and that the build file will actually build and publish the image and then use the ones that it just published. So I think there's no sketchiness at all.
I feel pretty good about them, and the fact that they're based on the universal base image from Red Hat means that the way is clear. That they're easily adopted into a very wide variety of environments.
Nice. All right. Well, I mean, that's our Docker portion, right? Do we have anything else with Docker?
Well, we could switch gears if we still have time to troubleshoot getting the router running in Kubernetes.
Yeah, that's why I was saying this will end our Docker portion of the program, and now we
Yep.
can do some live debugging, which is always exciting too. Ken was also having some trouble connecting his router to the controller and was asking some questions. And I said, hey, why don't we do this on ZDTV too? Because, why
Yeah.
not?
Well, the working backwards from the symptom, when the router starts up, it gets an error when it tries to talk to the controller. And the controller actually says, well, the reason that you've got an error is
Perfect.
probably because I don't understand that authority. So I started poking at the controller to see, well, which
One,
certificates
one,
do you have
one
on which
second.
ports?
1 second. Can you start the router or show the router's logs?
Yes,
I
absolutely.
think we should start there.
Okay. So in the bottom pane, let's switch over to the router namespace and look at the logs from the most recent container. There we
All
go.
right. And then fatal error connecting to the controller, EOF. When I see that, personally, I've seen that too many times. I am almost certain that the router was able to connect to the controller, but the controller slammed the door on the router.
Yeah.
That's what the EOF means
Yeah,
there.
this doesn't look like a networking problem. This looks like
Well, well, it
like an
looks like
active
you
rejection.
exactly. You went somewhere and
Right.
the otherwhere said no sir and kicks you out.
As opposed to
EOF.
passive passive like I never got a TCP handshake, or I
Right.
couldn't look up DNS, like,
Yeah,
sorry, we don't know
simply
what you're
not
talking about.
responding. Simply not
Right.
responding. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if we
Okay,
switch back
so
over to the
so then,
controller.
in 1 second. So then,
Okay.
Ken and I were going back and forth again on Mattermost, and I said, "Geez, that looks like a PKI problem." And Ken had already had the expectation that he said, "Could this be a PKI problem?" And I said, "Yeah, it definitely
Yeah.
looks like one." All right, so that's the background. And so then you decided to go look at the certificates that the router has, correct?
Yeah, I did. Yep.
And so, can you bring up the? Are you in the container right there?
Um, well, we've got a couple of different. I'm not in the container right there, but I can be in a container. If
I want to
that might
see the
not be that might
routers.
not be the only way to
I
to
want to
do
see
it
the
though.
router's configuration. Is what I want to look at first.
All right, let's look at the router's configuration. As soon as I remember my keystrokes. So we want to look at the config map for the router.
And then what I'm looking for specifically in here is the identity block. So that router identity dir slash client cert. Can we
Yep,
look at those four things are important? We need to look at the client cert first.
I already did extract those here. So I did a config map like this and got
Hold,
the value
hold
out.
on, because you've gone so fast.
Okay.
CD router get config map to that thing out to go template. Get me the ZD router YAML. Okay.
So I did that, but I also did get secrets for the identity and printed out all the certs.
How
Um,
do the certs arrive at that location?
they're in secrets, so they get stuffed in there by the enroll command.
Uh, well, okay. So, can you show me how it starts? Here's what I'm thinking. I am thinking that you are either recreating the router and not re-enrolling it, or the enrollment step is not succeeding, and you have old certificates out there.
Enrollment is succeeding, and these are from the correct enrollment. That much I'm sure of. Here's
How
the,
how can you be sure of it?
I'll show you. See, router 28 has the CD ID,
Hmm.
and that's um, I've created a router with a separate serial number for each attempt. And so the install that we're looking at right now is release 28. So release router 28 is the right router.
I'm
And
not. I'm not following. So
okay,
how did let me ask let me I'm going to ask just the dumb questions to debug this.
sure,
So at some point you issued a command to create an edge router. Where did you issue that command and how do you issue that command?
I'll show you. Create edge router with serial number
So you did it manually?
and
Ken
attribute.
did it?
I did it right here with the ZDCLI.
Okay. So you made a new serial number. You then ran Ziti as create edge router, enabled it with tunneling mode, gave it a attribute, and spat out the JWT.
Right.
And then how did you enroll the router?
So that JWT gets passed to the Helm install command like this.
Okay. Helm install.
So there's a
File.
namespace, there's a release name
And
next,
and this
and then
Helm
there's the
command will
chart.
use that serial number. So we're sure that it's
Right.
the same serial number.
Yep.
And we're sure that it's the same controller, correct?
There's our there's the full command. So there's our JWT
I
in the
am
file that
looking
we.
at those two things are the same. One has no port and one has a port. Why is that?
Yeah, I noticed that inconsistency, and it's because the controller endpoint is describing a remote thing, whereas the edge host is describing the Express binding the edge listener, and so the port is configured separately
Okay. Okay.
rather than as part of this value.
Okay. And now we have to look at what the Helm chart does.
Yep. So I won't actually run this. Looking at the Helm chart, which is actually a different window. I'm going to scroll to where the router is going to get its value for this enrollment JWT secret from that value. We're just going to create a secret named JWT with that value.
So
And then I'll go
this
to the next
is
step.
hang on. I'm looking at what you wrote here, trying to understand it. Look up the secret.
Yeah, let me just summarize. The purpose of this code is to use the secret. So a Helm chart can be installed or upgraded. If it's installed, then the secret doesn't exist, and we get the value from the variable. If it's an upgrade, the secret does exist, and so we get it from the secret, so we don't clobber it.
Okay.
That's all this does.
Is it possible that this lookup is failing?
No, because enrollment is succeeding. I'll show you the next step.
Okay.
Actually, let's just do another one so that you can see the enrollment happen. So I'll uninstall this router chart, meaning it'll be deleted from the cluster. Things got a little big there, didn't they? And we're looking at the router namespace, and we'll look for pods named like release 29. We'll update our serial number to 29 and create a router. So now we have a router JWT on this computer, and we'll say our router install command. Sorry, several attempts there. Yeah, it looks like the one that we formatted didn't recall the multi-line. So I'll go ahead and install the Helm chart using that JWT.
Okay.
Same address as before.
Yep.
All right, so down here, we're going to see an init, a post install job that's kicked off by Helm. And as soon as that runs, then we should be able to watch the enrollment happen in those logs. Looks like it's taking longer than usual to start up, so I'm gonna pop out and, oh yeah, it just says container creating. There we go. Okay, so there's our log. And so we create this temporary directory in the init container, run zd router and roll with that value. And now that value was mounted from the secret. And there's our config also mounted from a config map. Registration complete. And then run kube control to stuff those things into another secret.
And is it why are there only two files there? There
Because
should be
I need
four,
to
right?
turn on wrapping. There we go.
Oh,
Now that
there's
soft
four.
wrapping now that soft wrapping is enabled, you can see I'm
Yeah.
creating several properties: CACRT, TLS TLS.key, and client.crt are all
Okay,
being
doke.
created in that secret.
Yeah,
Right?
and they're all and if the file doesn't exist, it would fail.
Which file is that?
If
Oh, on the
slash
local file
temp,
system? That's
yeah.
correct. Yeah, the
All
init
right.
job would fail.
So we
And so we
feel
would
good that
see,
that all worked. All right.
yeah, we know it worked.
Okay.
This, and we can look at the secret directly right now.
Okay. Before we do that, now I am starting to think that the controller is misconfigured.
That's very possible.
Yep.
So if we loop through all of the those several things in that secret, we see all TLS key. There's the private keys. Everything's
Sure.
there, right?
All right. Well,
And
let's look at the controller's config now.
okay,
So, can we get the we'll need can you have all those files available locally in case we want to try them and use them?
yeah, we can pretty easily copy them out. It's a manual process, but we can copy them out.
I think we're going to need them.
You want to look at the config map for the controller.
The reason what I want to do is
How about I just get it as a file?
there was a function that I added to the ZDCLI functions back in the day. It's called verify cert against pool, and it will take an input and verify it against a CA
Yeah, I remember that.
chain. And what I'm thinking right now is that the CA bundle on the server is missing a particular piece of the chain. Or perhaps the CA that was returned to the router, one of the two.
So that reminds me, I did some analysis on that computed/composed CA bundle that gets returned from the well-known endpoint,
It's very
and
chatty.
it did not have the expected certificates.
Well, then
Well, at least
that'd
that
be a
is
problem.
it has certificates, but so when I do a login here, um, let's see, where does it put that?
Home file slash
There we go.
config dot yeah.
Here's our certs bundle right here. Yeah, that's our certs bundle. So if I actually wrote out, see if I can remember. Oh yeah, there we go. So it was, here's the, from an old controller instance that I wrote out, here's the subject and issuer that came back.
Mm-hmm.
So the very first one, the subject was Edge Intermediate, which
Mm-hmm.
is our Edge signer, and that was from the root. The next one is the default root. That's good. Expected to see that. Except that there aren't any server certificates that are issued by that CA. That
So
is, that's the root. All of the certificates come from the intermediate. So I'm not sure. Maybe
this
the root is,
completes the chain.
it completes the chain. Sure. So we
Yeah.
go all the way to the root. All right,
Yeah.
that's fine. But then we have X web root, but not intermediate. So I'm not sure where, like, there's no trust chain there.
How did you configure the
Yeah.
controller's
Well, I'm sure
configuration?
that's the issue, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll show you. So if we go to the controller config, I'm looking at the router config. I need to get to the controller config. So we're getting, I've named these different roots of trust as default identity, edge signer, and XWeb identity for now. Default identity is mounted here, configured for the identity block.
I would not call it the default identity personally. I understand why you did, but I would call it the overlay identity or something, anything else.
Maybe the control plane identity.
Yeah, that's fine.
I believe it is used by the. I believe that
So
that CA does issue the certificate for the control plane API.
it definitely does. Yeah.
Yeah, and so here's our edge signer. Use edge intermediate CA.
Okay, I would just call it Edge, personally. Like the intermediateness of it is not relevant. Like there's the control plane that makes sense, and then there's the Edge that makes sense,
And then
and
all of our
then
web. Oh, sorry. Go
oh
ahead.
oh interesting. So yeah, can you go back to the signing certificate section?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, I would refer to this as the signer. That's the signer stuff, not the Edge intermediate, for what it's worth.
Well,
So
this is
like
the
Edge.
name of the CA.
But on the left, you don't have an edge intermediate. You have default identity, edge signer,
Oh, I see
and
what you're saying. It's inconsistent.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I would refer that is the identity providing
This is an
PKI.
entire trust chain. This
Yeah. Yep.
certificate manager spec
Yep.
or manifests list of manifests here is all the way from the root to the cert, including the intermediate, and that's the router again.
Okay. So this one right here, and you're sure. Well, I mean, that won't matter, but like that'll matter when you go to make an identity. And then if you look at the XWeb one, that's the one I would call Edge. And I would not call it XWeb. I would call that Edge because this is really what we're going to provide here. It's going to be the Edge. So this is going to be your Edge controller stuff. And the CA is wrong here. It shows you. Oh no, it says CRT. I just can't read. Uh, yeah, okay. And so, I mean, that looks right then.
So that's our client API binding. We also have a management API binding with the same cert.
Management API. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so you're going ham on this.
They're split. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one has edge management. And then there's a Prometheus as well, which uses the same cert.
Okay. I mean, that seems correct, but I would imagine. How did the CA.cert get generated?
By cert manager.
Cert manager's not doing it right then. It's got to be. It is not giving you the full chain or something along those lines. So like if you look at some point in the quick start, there is a place where I concatenate all of the PEMs onto one another just to take these kinds of challenges out of the equation entirely because it's such a pain in the butt.
Right. And that's exactly the kind of silent solution. I think it's going to keep happening, right? We need to. I need to understand before I have an opinion about what should happen. But
I mean, it's never why there. In my opinion, there's never a problem with just adding more certificates to a chain, other than the amount of data you have to transfer.
it's a trust bundle. All of these are
Right?
valid cryptographic notaries.
Yes, and
I'm agreeing with you.
okay, so that's another plus one. I got it.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Lead with information.
I think I would expect that the problem is that the cert returned that ca.cert is not the full PKI root, and I would think if you simply go out and grab those certificates and concatenate them, it'll probably end up working out. You can try using that verify what did I call that thing? Verify. What's that function
Well,
called?
I want to
It's
do it
right here. It's cool.
manually.
Yeah. So you can look at the way that all it does is call OpenSSL.
Okay.
Like if you look at the line 763 of that particular ZD CLI functions. No, you gotta go to ZD CLI functions. Yeah, line 763. Yeah, that's the image. Go back to the Docker image one.
Which line?
763. There you go. You can see that's the command to use. And you pass in the CA file and you pass in the certificate that you want to verify. So what you would do here is use this command to pass the controller's identity CA with the router's client cert and see if it verifies.
They're not the same CA. I can tell you right now, those are different
Oh, they're not?
CAs.
Where is the router's CA from?
The router's client and server certificate are issued by the Edge Intermediate CA.
Oh, that's the mistake then. Oh, geez, I didn't realize that. That has to be from the identity section of the controller.
Yeah, and I'm just not sure why this is, but we can see that it's the case right here. There's our server certificate
For
and there's our client certificate.
for what?
The prior install of router. They were from
The
this release
Yeah,
28.
they're from the wrong PKI
Yeah. So, but I don't know why. I mean,
because
that's
you're so you're saying that you didn't make those because the router enrollment did.
yeah, the router enrollment created those.
That is bizarre, and it's from Edge. So uh, this was from the signing certificate section. Is that what I understand?
Correct. This is from the same CA that's configured as Edge Signer. And that's the only place that that CA is configured in the controller.
Can can you use the version that you just released of the artifacts? The Helm chart, the Docker images. Like, could this be a particular bug that just came in?
Right. Um, I'm pretty sure that we're running. Yeah, we can actually verify in the log that we're running 027.2. Um,
Well,
here, I'll use the exact images that we just built
yeah,
for just to be totally certain about it. So I'll just
I
go back
would
to
I
my
would expect
deployment.
them to be from the controllers section, not from the signing section for the and no, even the tunneler wouldn't matter.
So I
No,
had done this before and installed 027.2. I was just using the K-Bingham Net Foundry image. If we look at the controller pod log, go back up to the top, we should be able to, no, we've lost, I don't seem to have that.
what was
So
the
I'll just,
command that you ran in order to verify the right there's the looking for your OpenSSL command that you ran. OpenSSL X509 no out subject issuer fingerprint.
so we were the controller is 027.2.
Does it report that even though you built it from release next, or would it report
No,
something
when
different?
you build from release next, you get 000.
Yeah.
So that's
So
why I verified that.
how did you deploy that? Did you redeploy the whole entire world while we were watching?
I had already built myself 027.2 container images in the Kenny
Ah,
Bingham Net Foundry uh,
I
user
see. I see.
namespace.
I see. That makes sense.
And that's what this deployment is using. They're going to be identical to the ones we just built, but we can certainly use those to show it end to end. I don't think that's a bad idea. Just change the value in the chart here from K Bingham Net Foundry over to OpenZiti. Now that that's done, and we can see in the chart that our version is 0.27.2. So that's the tag that's going to get when it deploys. So I'll do an uninstall of the controller. Now we see our pod is gone, and I'll do an install with a new serial. New controller serial with all the same stuff. So now we have a controller that's using that image, initializing, and I'll also uninstall the router, create a new serial for the router 30.
Well, I just looked at mine, and the client certificate is from the signing intermediate. It is not from the router intermediate, which I suppose could make sense. So what you had was correct as to what is expected. The PKI for the client certificate from the router is from the signing intermediate. And the server certificate is also from the signing intermediate. And the CA is also the signing intermediate. So they're all from the signing intermediate. I guess I was incorrect.
Okay.
But that does mean that when the router connects to the controller, the router is expecting in the CA bundle, I would expect to see the PKI from the controller.
And this is the trust bundle that I got back with this configuration. So the very first cert is from the intermediate CA, the Edge intermediate CA, which is my Edge signer, and the issuer of the router's certificates. But this is for
Yes.
clients. This is
Yes.
for Edge clients to trust the server.
No, it's for all of it. So
Okay.
um okay, I'm trying to come up with the right question here. All right. So you have a router connecting to the controller. What is the CA? This is the CA bundle that the is configured in the router. Is that
This is the CA bundle that Edge clients see when they ask for the controller for well-known certs.
I'm asking specifically in the router, what
Uh-huh.
does the router CA cert look like?
Okay.
I want to see
I
if the controller's trust chain is in that chain.
You want to look at the CA cert that the router has configured in its identity block?
Yeah. And this is the controller's CA block,
It
right?
should be the controller's Edge intermediate CA cert.
Well, let's not talk about should be's. I just want to know what I'm looking at. Am I looking at right there, all those issuers? Are they from that's the controller's CA cert, right? That was configured? Because like I just see it
These,
for each and then it output the issuers, but I don't know where it's coming from.
right. So I did a Ziti login, which got the well-known certs into a file, and then I split that file out into files named like temp
So
cert.
let's not do it that way. Instead, let's because it like that REST endpoint might be amalgamating things
Yeah,
on your behalf. So
right.
let's look at the actual file in the controller
Oh, in the
that is the
controller,
C
not the
that
router.
is yeah, that is the CA bundle at the identity section of the controller, way at the top.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Because it could be that it doesn't contain the signing intermediate in it. So when a certificate from the signing intermediate shows up at the controller goes, I don't know that trust chain, and just shuts the door. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I noticed that in some script glue that I stumbled upon, there was a concatenation going on to add the Edge Signer cert
Ex-
to
ex-
that
exactly.
trust bundle, but I wasn't
Exactly.
sure why, so I removed it so that I would make sure that it broke and I would figure out why.
Well, here we are. Nice. That was
Because
smart, Ken.
I like pain like that apparently.
Yep. No, that's good. All right. I bet you that's the problem, though. So if we look at the CA file, the file configured in the controller's root identity section that controls
Yeah,
the control plane,
right.
that CA is not going to contain the signing certificate.
CA cert. This is it right here. It's just that
Okay.
one certificate.
It's just one?
Yeah, that's the issuer certificate for
Oh.
the server certificate.
It
That's exactly what I told Cert Manager to do, is to put the CA cert there. It's not treated as a cert because the config doesn't say trust bundle, it says CA cert.
I mean, I think that we have just split the finest of hairs. What is the difference between those two things? It just says CA in the config. It doesn't say A cert. And like if you look at the quick start, it says CAS as in plural CAs cert.
It is the certificate chain.
Chain. Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
A cert. Defines trusted CAs.
right. And it's
Yeah.
strictly optional because why?
Because it's an identity block. It's not optional for the controller. I mean, it could be. You could have trusted CAs. You could have legitimate certificates, I suppose. Right.
It's a right because this identity block is used other places, but in this particular case, it's not optional.
I would expect that you need at least the signing certificate in there. But like I said, you could be getting your certificates from somewhere else. So
So
I suppose it could be optional.
if I just add the Edge intermediate CA cert to this, then it might be good.
Yeah, but uh, please change it to the word signing because the edge intermediate to me is not a good enough term. It's the identity signer or something. You don't have to do that now, obviously, but I would really recommend that we clarify that terminology. But yes, if you do that, I think it'll work.
Okay.
Is that something we can do live, or is that?
I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to figure out
Yeah,
how to do it.
I don't know. Right, because sometimes it's
Yeah,
not always so obvious.
yeah, I'm about halfway there. Um,
All right.
I need
Well,
to
Well, let's follow up.
stringify
We'll
the two
follow up on that.
certs.
Yeah,
Okay.
no problem.
All right.
I think we hit pay dirt there. And for anybody who ends up watching this or did watch this,
God help
I
you.
hopefully hopefully you followed it along because this is without a doubt the most complicated bit of OpenZD. This little bit of configuration is
Yeah.
absolutely the most mind warping section, particularly when you have the overrides that can come from where, how the identities for the routers are actually from the identity block, but they actually need to be in the CA block of the controller. Like, it's definitely the mind meltiest part. All
No
right, Ken.
doubt. Not no doubt. I mean, somehow the controller has succeeded at being both well, ZD in general has succeeded at being simultaneously flexible and opinionated. And so it's going to work and it's going to be extremely reliable as long as you know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, you just got to get it to work the first time, and then it just
Right.
works. All right, Ken. Well, that was a good ZDTV. I've enjoyed it. Thank you for showing us. Oops. Here, what's going on here? What's going on? There we go. I think we both
We
fought
have
over
dueling
turning off.
toggles.
Yeah, we did. Thanks for showing your screen and taking us through that. Thanks for releasing legitimate images. That's cool. Now we'll be able to play with those too. And then whenever ZD ends up getting the 27.3, we'll get another one from the CI.
Likewise, Clint.
Are you going to push that CI build name change? That's a good one to change. Remember the Docker file or
Yeah.
the GitHub action.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Well, until next time, Ken, we'll see you later.
Later.